Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off.
Blast off on another epic episode of the Hyper Anomalous Esoteric Research Organization podcast, also known as Hero Paranormal. My name is Ryan, the anomalous ambassador of the airwaves, and have we ever got an amazing episode for you today? The one, the only, Dan Dillman. And we're going to get right to that. I'm going to try to jam as quickly as possible through the stuff nobody wants to hear, which is the grift. But here it is. If you haven't gone over to heroparanormal.com, check it out. Anything you purchase over there, including subscribing, helps me bring you more episodes. You can also go to happinessmedical.com. Anything you buy there does the same. There, that was quick. That was easy. Painless. Now, Dan Dillman. Great guy. Very knowledgeable. Anybody who is anybody has been telling me, you need to talk to Dan. You need to talk to Dan. I finally was able to hook or crook, get his number, and start talking to him. And what an amazing guy. What an amazing amount of knowledge. He knows what's really going on behind the scenes, not only with treasure, ancient archaeology, and the Uintah Basin of Utah, but much, much more. So let's get to it. Let's blast off. The one, the only, Dan Dillman. Welcome to the Hero Paranormal podcast.
Hey, what's up, Ryan?
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Excellent, brother. Nice to meet you over the phone.
This is great. I'm excited to finally talk to you. I've heard about you for some time, and man, I'm excited to meet you in person here shortly in August. And I guess we'll just blast right off with this if you're good with it.
Yeah, for sure. I take it you're recording?
Yep. I can either go back. We can either start recording, or I can start from where we started. It doesn't matter. What's easier for you?
Oh man, it's whatever you got, rocking and rolling. I am good either way.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so let me just ask you the obvious question. I got a bunch of questions. You've spent a lot of quality time looking into many of the mysteries that blow me away, and everywhere I look, they're like, you need to talk to Dan. You need to talk to Dan. And I'm finally talking to Dan. So there's so much mystery and intrigue, whether it's talking giants or treasure or, the history of the Uintah Basin. I guess my main question to start off with is, what got you interested in looking into this more, I guess, fringe history that mainstream archaeologists are sort of ignoring? I think they're going to have to accept it. But what got you looking into these mysteries?
Well, it started with my grandfather and uncles, man. It's really the same origin of, my treasure adventures was the origins of the ancient mysteries, of the world. My grandfather was just, prolific in so many areas of this stuff that, as a little kid, as little as I can remember, 5 years old, I can remember even before that, but of him really sharing with me and I being allowed to sit at the kitchen table to, be a part of hearing all of the stories of treasure and ancient civilizations and all that stuff. So it started with my grandfather and uncles. And it ranged everything, man, from lost treasure to Easter Island to UFOs and paranormal activity and supernatural powers. The list goes on.
It really does. And the more you look into it, I've found that, you'll look into it for one reason, and then you'll find these little Easter eggs that you didn't expect to be there. And you'll look into those, and it's kind of like a spider web, right? Like you start connecting the dots, And you realize there's a lot of history that we are just no longer told. And, specifically in the Uintah Basin, I've been blown away finding connections with giants in Sardinia, similar, drawings, pictographs, petroglyphs throughout the world, many that depict almost the same type of entities. And now we're looking into a lot of this DNA sequencing and genetic testing, genealogy, so to speak. And a lot of that is, thankful to people that in Utah that are interested in finding out about the indigenous tribes. And we're finding information that the Ute are the closest living relatives to the Aztecs, which of course brings to mind, wait a minute, did the Aztecs come up from Mexico or did they go down from Utah? What are your thoughts on some of these mysteries having to do with like the DNA and the genetic sequencing?
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit here and there, but I captured what you said. In a nutshell, in time, eventually, when the powers to be allow the information to be revealed, as we are having with some of this DNA and this other information that's coming to light, and not necessarily by the powers to be, but because of DNA being so prevalent in the testing and the access that a lot of people have, it's proving what we already know, at least what my family has always known, what I think a lot of others who are descendants or ascendants is what I like to call ourselves, that we have ascended from, not descending from, our ancient ancestors. And the Aztecs tell us where they came from. See, this is why, mainstream media, history, archaeology, academia is always telling us that myths and legends of the Aztecs, when in fact it is the history of the Aztecs, the Maya, the Inca, but let's just focus on the Aztecs. They say they came from the north, from a place called Aslan. And so this is where they say they came from. We know that they came from the north, and then they went south and founded Tenochtitlan. And then, of course, we common sense, let's just put away every myth and legend and even the historical fact that we know about the Aztecs and the relationship to this part of the Americas. But common sense would say, if we came from a place and we founded a new place, would we just abandon all routes and remembrance, and would we not go visit and have a constant communication, trade routes, family? So just common sense, when we have the basic facts, tells us, of course, not only did the Aztecs come from the north and went south, but they had traditional, constant going back to the areas of their ancient homeland. Isn't it what we do when we're kids? Oh, my grandmother used to live in Petaluma. And so when I go to Petaluma, I like to go visit the house that I played in as a kid. We go there, check it out, have great memories, visit the land, remember those magic moments. And it's the same. It doesn't matter what culture you are. So it is common sense to me that of course, their relatives, right? My relatives, some are still in Petaluma. I go visit them. And so I'm just making that association that the Aztecs, even though they went south to form this new kingdom, they still had communication and ties and relations with their family members who stayed. And so I don't want to ramble too much because I probably am already, but, we have known the Uto-Aztecian language connection. We have known that, that the oral history and traditions of the Aztecs and where they came from. The Hopi tell us they're descendants as well. So we've got all the facts. All the dots have existed. It's just that those who've been allowed to tell the story of the history have given their own narrative, opposed to allowing, what I say is true history. Unfortunately, I tell people, let me give you an alternate historic timeline and alternate historic facts, when really it should just be the historical facts. So sorry for the ramble.
No, that was awesome, Dan. Not a ramble at all. It's mind-blowing. And when I look at this and I try to wrap my head around it, of course, one of the questions that bubbles to the surface is, why are so many mainstream archaeologists just finally sinking their teeth into this? Why have they negated so much of this lost or forbidden history for so long?
I believe it has to do with, it's like everything, man. It appears that generations of peoples, and we won't even classify, what peoples I'm talking about, but just in general, generations of civilizations come into existence, come into power, system of things, world powers, governments, and systems, and they have a narrative. And they have a narrative, and then they start educating, right? They have the schools, and people go to the schools, the colleges, the high schools, and then colleges, and they've got a curriculum that is laid out for them that they were taught under. And then it's really just, they've just operated within the box for so long, and hey, if you deviate it from operating or thinking outside the box, you were chastised. So I'm confident that there are lots of archaeologists, especially those who work in the Southwest and Utah and Nevada and New Mexico, and who have seen things and who have, questioned things and said, wait a minute, this, seems to be a connection here. And then they're told, hey, you want to be friends, you want to be that, then you shouldn't be, you should just quit. I just met with a young man who was an archaeology student, and that's what they told him. He started questioning things and bringing things up, and they basically told him, oh, you want to be friends, you want to be, a conspiracy or alternate history thinker, and they poo-poo him. So that's mostly why I imagine that a lot of these in academia, they're just, they're taught a certain way. They're told this is how the world operates, or this is how history was. This is the timeline and the things that have happened within it, and this is what you should then be teaching others, because we taught this to you. This is the way we want it told, and they haven't been willing to challenge the authority or the evidence, or even come question that stuff, right? Because they don't want to lose their jobs, or they don't want to not get their degrees, they don't want to move on, and they don't want to be chastised. So you can understand that. So that is why a lot of it, for decades, for more than decades, for generations, has been really limited. And you have to keep in mind, too, there's a narrative, there's a story, there's his story, and who his told, I try to refrain from saying, the white man, because it's not really the white man, it's the system that came here, and they needed to justify stealing the land from the natives and justify, what they were doing. So they, of course, don't want this history to be true history to unfold and be known, because, we become sympathetic. We no longer then carry the ideas that they had that, oh, yeah, we could just take this. They become remorseful or they become compassionate towards the natives. And that wasn't what they wanted to happen at the time. They were too busy, focusing on their goals. And, everything's unfolded the way the Great Spirit, has allowed it. So I say it is what it is. But I think it is time for people to start waking up to realize that we have a different historic reality that is just coming to the masses. Even those 5 years ago who would speak to me and ask me questions about Montezuma and the Aztecs and Quetzalcoatl and just this whole story, this whole movement we're talking about here, they wouldn't even want to entertain it. They're just 100% foo-foo. But more and more people are awakening and understanding that things aren't quite the way they were told they were, history, right, and many other things. So once again,
that's a good answer. No, I love it. I love it, man. And it is so true. They had to have like this framework, this colonialism was, and religion, of course, to sell this bill of goods, which is faulty at surface level. And, I'm fascinated that it's not just the genetics. Like you said, mainstream archaeology is now finding, linguists as well, are now finding that family of indigenous languages goes, as you said, north and south. And it goes all the way down to Central America, Costa Rica, where I was born. And if you look at this on a map, you can tell that this was a very massive civilization to be able to cover ground all the way to the north, all the way practically to the beginning of South America that they can trace. It may have gone further, and I really like that you input that name, that the Aztecs called them Aztlan. Have you found any connections? Because, well, I'll just be honest. I found this very strange that when you look up the, Atlantis or the Atlantic Ocean, then the actual real history that's jotted down is minute, where they say, well, the Atlantic may have gotten its name from Atlas. But it sounds a lot more like Atlan to me, Atlantic. And have you looked into this large civilization and just how far their reach was?
It was global. In my opinion, it was global. The pyramids are proof of that. The pyramids are a universal or global technology that is right in front of our face, and it was global. I'm convinced that Atlantis was a global civilization. It was a one world union, so to speak. It didn't mean that there weren't, other, just like we have different cities, New York, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, we have these capitals where pyramids were, but it was universal, man. They were aligned with the same stars. The mathematics are the same. So to me, Atlantis and Aslan is the same place. They say they came from there. They're said to carry the records. And you're right, there is a limited amount of information. We've got some stuff from Plato, but then we have some stuff from other sources. We have someone like Edgar Casey, right, who was in connection with the Akashic records. And this dude, how does he pull out of the air? I mean, I know how, but just sharing, he pulls and says, look, the Aztec and the Maya were the keepers of the records of Atlantis. And then you've got other mystics throughout, modern times, I would say, late 1800s, early 1900s, Helen Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, and the list goes on. Who all speak of Atlantis. You even will have Manly P. Hall, who was I believe he was an honorary 33-degree Mason, but he was definitely a mystic and a guy who was all about uncovering and connecting, all the ancient esoteric teachings and sharing them with folks. Even he somehow was pulling things from some ancient text about Atlantis and Aztlan. He speaks of it. So we have all of these bits of information. And then, come on, we have the 1847 map, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, right? On that map, it points out Aztlan as the homeland, and it shows it right in the Utah area. So it's even on a map from the from the 1847 Treaty of Guadalupe map, where Mexico was made sure that they put that on there, so that they were claiming their heritage. How does that accidentally get on a map? You know what I mean? And it's not fiction. It's not some story we're making up. Anyone can go to the Library of Congress and get a copy of the map. It's there.
And that map is mind-blowing the way it funnels right up through Utah and Colorado. I mean, right through the Uintah Basin. And it's very obvious where you can really, it's a beautiful map, first of all. But the first time I saw that 1847 map, I was like, whoa, this is insane. And like you said, this is 1847. This isn't that long ago.
Right. So, the information, the dots are here for folks to connect. I think it's been, when I say the powers to be, I don't even know who I'm talking about. At least there's nothing for me to share with anyone, hey, who I think it is. But the powers to be, don't really want this information disseminated to the masses as fact, right? So those powers to be who are in control of education systems and other things, poo-poo it and just say, hey, that's not a path we want to go down, Mm-hmm. Not necessarily persecuting people, but we're not co-signing. And as you know, a lot of people, for whatever reason, a government entity or academic entity with prestige to say, or a scientific community, or a certain professor, or a certain astrophysicist to say, this is a fact, this is the truth, and then they believe it. There's just a lot of us, like my grandfather, myself, probably you, and many others, who have done our own research, who have gone deep into all areas that we can to find the truth, and it's right there. So that's the beautiful thing, is that most of the information that we need to make an educated conclusion, not even guess, just to really, take the data and parse it and say, here it is. It's right before our eyes. And we don't need someone to quantify it or to solidify it or put their stamp of approval. I don't need someone to tell me what is true and what isn't true. I don't mind hearing people's experiences, but I have decided for myself, after the facts, there's no denying it.
That's right. And with this Native American genetic sequencing, DNA is fairly new. The linguistics have been there where they, trace it back to the Nahuatl language, and it goes, as you said, north and all the way down into Central America, and I believe, like you do, much further. It's only recently that the DNA is has kind of edited this and thrown another layer over it where you put them on top of each other, and it's starting to get so astounding it can't be denied. Yeah, it's like, and moreover, the genetic haplogroup X, the way that spreads, as you said, to a global level, it's like, wait a minute, these were people that were crossing oceans. These were people that, obviously, we have these pyramids that are everywhere. Do you think it's just by, I love when people say, oh, but they're different. What are your thoughts on the pyramids?
Are they so different? I would like someone to share with me, show me how the mathematics of alignments are different. Mm-hmm. What is different? That they've got a slightly different design, but is their positioning and the degree of building and precise alignments to the stars and to other mathematical equations aren't they the same? So I don't understand how they can discredit it, because and if they are, they're discrediting by looks, so they're discrediting it because it slightly looks different. That seems pretty shallow and without much evidence or facts or anything behind those false claims. Look, man, they're pyramids. They are global. It is a global technology. It is a global mathematics. You can even start getting into the clearly the calendar systems that the Aztecs and the Maya, were using. And once again, this stuff becomes universal, man. They knew there were 13 zodiacs, right? Mm-hmm. We're told there's 12, there's 13, and they're anyway. To me, it's evident and it's clear that this is a global technology, this is a global civilization, and it's something that we have forgotten. And I'm not saying everyone has forgotten, because not everyone has forgotten, but at least it's been an amnesia that seems to have overtaken a majority of the civilization. But once again, there are those, there are ancient records from Egypt, from all across the world, and we need teachings, whether they be oral or written, that really say, the truth about these things. You know, they're the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it, you brought something up that's a really interesting overlap, and I'm glad you did. Is there any way we could go into the deeper explanation of, you know, how they did their counting, the modeling their, the evidence of, you know, this was not just, we often hear about these civilizations, these indigenous people as being very rudimentary and basic, and far from it, right? I mean, if you look at the Aztecs is a great example. I mean, they built stuff. I'm sure that we've built things that will not survive the test of time the way theirs did. So where, you know, these origins go way back. I mean, we have genes on either side. There's less, of course, over on the European side. But as you said, Plato talked about this. And why is it easier for us to just paint them as, you know, having sticks and being able to only do very basic hunter-gatherer fundamental, you know, tasks?
Yeah, well, let's keep it real. In fact, they call them savages, animals, and they were just justifying the conquering or the taking and the destruction. You know, that's all they were doing, was justifying their wrong actions. And the only way to do that, you can't say, my God, these guys are as sophisticated as us. They've got kings, and they've got rulers, and they've got laws, and they've got mathematics, and they got sciences. You know, the people I have to imagine the masses wouldn't have been for the mass extermination and taking of everything if they all right, because a lot of these folks, like you said earlier, you know, we're coming here. God has given us this land, right? They were told something, and there's a promised land, and God wants you to come to this land and do it. It's yours. And these savages need to go. They're devils, and you know, man. Sadly, but it seems evident that that was their story to justify their wrong actions. What else could it be? They wanted to take what they had, and they didn't want them to have any claim. So how could an animal, in their opinion, have claim to the land? How can a savage have any claims? They're not even of God. They're made by the devil. You know, such bullshit. Excuse my language,
it's so true, because they did go there. They went there. They went exactly where you just said. They went there. And that's all for the most part, you know, let's face it, because they wanted their stuff, primarily gold. And that's been disproven, obviously, that they're, you know, from the devil. I'm not going to go there because that gets into a bunch of theology and claims. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. And, but let's talk about the gold that they did have, why they wanted it. And more importantly, where did it come from, in your opinion?
Well, there's no doubt that you know the gold was being mined in Mexico and in what we call the Americas. You know, it was this whole area. You know, the gold was coming all from around here. You think the gold rush in California was only to those gold rush settlers? Heavens no. The natives were accessing that gold, I'm sure, for eons before anyone ever showed up in modern times talking about a gold rush. So the gold was being mined from all around, being brought from all around, and of course, you know, the Aztecs were were craftsmen. They had fabulous, you know, technology. That's another thing, right? They were already making fabulous artifacts and amazing, you know, statues and jewelry and all of the above. So where did it come from? It came from the same place today. You know, they were mining it, and it was being mined on a massive scale, and it was from all regions around here. And remember, you know, as far, you know, I say remember, but I always say this so that people can't go beat me up or can't say I'm claiming something else. It's my opinion that, you know, we call it Mexico today, but basically the whole Americas this whole part of of the world that we're talking about was one place, man. You know, we're the only ones. We're the only ones who started. You know, well, I won't say we're the only ones, but technically, we're the ones drawing imaginary lines, talking about this is California, this is Utah, this is Mexico. Come on, man. You know, they had a deeper understanding of their place in the cosmos, and Mother Earth was giving life, water, food, gold, everything that they needed to do what they were doing. And there were no restrictions on that. And, you know, we hear stories, and of course we know, at least in modern times, that there were, you know, tribes even fighting tribes, and tribes conquering other tribes. But I'm convinced at the time of Atlantis, it was not that type of, you know, situation. It was more that global kind of golden age, peaceful time. Now, clearly something happened. But anyway, I'm not getting off track. The gold is mined the same way we do it today, and they had plenty. Right? You know, the gold rush even came not too long ago, and there was plenty of gold then, and there's plenty of gold now.
And it's a staggering amount of gold that, for example, the conquistadors extracted from the Americas. People don't realize the numbers we're talking about, and they just basically melted it all down, tortured, destroyed, and killed anybody that could say anything bad about them, and they had this unquenchable thirst. But there was so much gold, more gold than they had ever seen. This was something that not only filled their coffers, but all of a sudden, you know, Europe exploded. And really, all that wealth came from the Americas. So you know, it makes you wonder, why was this gold so esteemed by the indigenous Americans? And I doubt that it's just because it's shiny. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think gold has multiple purposes. Not only is it beautiful and shiny to look at, we know that gold is used in almost every technology that we use today. I'm convinced that there was technology being used by the ones that we call ancients, and they were using gold for such things. Even when you hear stories of the gods who came and they wanted gold and whatnot, you know, we can get into Anunnaki, which we're not, but just bringing that into the conversation slightly is, I don't believe it was a thirst. I don't even believe, even though I know Spain's empire was built on the gold and silver and jewels that were, you know, came from the Americas. I'm convinced that the higher powers to be were not just looking for the gold. Yes, they wanted that. And and the people were meant, because keep in mind, how do I do this without being confusing and getting too off track? Gold was established as a valuable commodity by the ruling elite. Okay. Now, was gold really something that they needed? They can't eat it. Well, I'm even talking about the elite. Like, let's have a common sense conversation about gold. Why would gold be so important even to kings and queens of Spain and these other governments, and to the conquistadors? To the conquistadors, it was important because they were told, since they were little and before that, by the ruling elite, that gold was the value that we're basing stuff off of. So that's why they would be savages over trying to get it. But I'm convinced that the ruling elite were there looking also for ancient records. From time immemorial, these groups who had to have originally come from Atlantis, and even though as they have memory loss and forgetting, and they become different countries and yada yada as time and hundreds and thousands of years go by, you know, these guys are still on a mission for ancient relics of technology, records, things that they're searching for. I'm convinced that some of the greatest things that they were looking for were these ancient records and technology. Because does it make sense? Does it make sense that the Catholic Church would have all of ancient records burned and destroyed. Does that even make sense?
Mm-mm.
It doesn't make, to me, it doesn't even make sense. Why wouldn't, if I came upon a civilization as great as theirs, and trust me when I tell you, even Cortez's letters to the king were like, holy shit, this kingdom is on par with such and such, and it's amazing. And, why would they destroy them for just, no, that's just, once again, the bullshit that we've been told. They were trying to get records and information. They wanted that technology and that knowledge for themselves as well. So I'm convinced that it was multifold for the people. Yeah, it's gold. Go get the gold. But there were those who were looking for greater things. What is more powerful than gold?
So true.
Knowledge.
It's a deep
Knowledge.
question. Yeah. Knowledge and the codexes, like you said, these ancient people had codexes, and gold was a part of it. We've seen very little in the museums because, as you said, they melted almost everything down. It was just slash and burn. And they were so greedy that, many ships, much like the Atocha, they're just so overweighted that they would go down in storms, and the greed, right? Just the greed. So let's talk about this gold. And in your opinion, this empire valued the gold because of the knowledge. And this would obviously have to go back, I would guess, millennia.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. The gold was important. The gold was important to the Aztecs. But notice that even Cortez said it's not like they had the gold and they were feverishly fighting over the gold. The Aztecs were going goofy over the gold. They were storing it up. They were keeping it in halls and vaults and whatnot. And once again, gold was not the basis of the Aztec economy. It wasn't the basis of their money system. So there are some great, questions to ask and, answers to discover to some of this stuff. The gold was clearly valuable and it was used. It was sacred, though. And that's something else that people have to understand. This, they were operating, I say it all the time, they were operating at a different level of consciousness, man. Everything to this current system of things is so material. Even with those conquistadors, a majority of them, I can't say every one of them because I don't know their hearts and wasn't there with them in that moment, but very materialistic. The Aztec, especially someone like Montezuma, who was a high priest, a king, a high priest, an emperor, the top scientist, the top spiritualist, the top mathematician. This dude, was the epitome of the ancient wisdom of the ages, and they weren't going crazy. Wasn't Montezuma even reported to be giving gold to them? He wasn't like, oh shit, man, I'm holding on to this stuff. You guys can't have this, can't have any of this. He was giving it away. He was like, these guys are fools. There's even a story that I have that Montezuma even, he never, and another thing is Montezuma never for a minute believed that Cortez was a god. He never, that is such, I got to stop using bad language. That was such baloney to think that Montezuma believed that Cortez was a god. Impossible. He even sent one of Quetzalcoatl's items supposedly to him, and it was made of clay. Cortez sent it back. He didn't want it. So even in that moment, he would have known. But there's no way he knew or believed that they were gods because there was a prophecy for generations before they ever settled in Tenastic land of how the civilization was going to, how their system of things, their civilization was going to come to an end. And Montezuma believed that they were the ones that his ancestors had prophesied about. And that is even relayed in one of Bernal Diaz's conversations with Montezuma, where Montezuma says You truly are the ones my ancestors spoke about coming. And there's so many more layers to it. And I know you're talking about the gold, and once again, the gold and the riches, there are still a lot of it that exists. But the truest treasure that we're searching for, that our family is searching for, and yes, we believe there'll be gold and riches, and not necessarily movie size stuff, because we're looking for the tomb of Montezuma. I mean, I'm keeping it real. We're looking for the tomb of Quetzalcoatl, and we've been looking for the tomb of Montezuma. And we believe, yes, of course, there'll be artifacts and some, very, very important treasures there. But it is the ancient records that Montezuma did not want the Spanish and those guys getting, because he was meant to continue to hide those ancient records of Atlantis and those and all of that stuff for an appointed time in the future. And so that is what we have been searching for, and we believe that that we are close. If it's the appointed time, then it will be revealed.
And I am intrigued by the enigmatic mysteries, like you said, the knowledge and the historical significance, which it seems that even the indigenous were aware of. It wasn't just the material gold for them. They, in fact, the Spanish wrote that they were really scared of many of these indigenous tribes because they weren't afraid of death. And the wild thing is, here these Spanish are just covered in literally shields, armor. They're horrified of death. They're only interested in the material. And these guys got really good, much like a machine, at, decimating these populations, getting the gold, pulling one over on them. And I'm always reminded of, that concept, like you said, this knowledge. And one particular tale of Atahualpa, because they did the same to him. He was fearless. They tortured him. They got the gold. And there is an amazing account on both sides, mind you, of this location near Puno, Peru, where one of the higher priests took off running. A door opened in a mountain, solid rock, according to the legend, and he dimensionally, kind of like through a Stargate, escaped. And basically, the reality is that this horrified the Spanish, and it goes to show that the knowledge is more important than the gold. And I believe it's called Aramu Maru. And people have since claimed that if you meditate outside, it takes a long time. One individual in particular has claimed that he entered it, and it was sort of like a Stargate. I don't want to go into that, but it's obvious that the knowledge, the meaning, the symbolism, and the ritual was more important than the material wealth. And I think the same is true here, because there's far too many that just want the gold. The last thing they want is to put these things in museums. What are your thoughts about many of these Smithsonian-like organizations who in more recent times have come through and taken many things all throughout the Southwest?
Yeah. Well, as soon as you started talking about portals and dimensions, and that's really me of what I was saying, that they're operating at a higher level of consciousness and understanding. Look, we're just getting into understanding. When I say we, mainstream academia, again, getting under the understanding of multi-dimensions, time travel, portals, these other dimensions, accessing it, CERN, yada, yada, the list goes on. Once again, these cultures and these peoples were already understanding that technology, knowing how to access it without large computer systems, because we know, as the world is catching on, consciousness is the power. And their consciousness was capable of connecting and accessing these realms. And just as you mentioned with the story of the rock door opening up or running into a portal, the Grand Canyon, that's when we start getting into the Smithsonian There's no doubt that these organizations have been seeking out. There's reasons why. Once again, anyone with common sense, ask yourself the question, why is the government stopping us, the people who supposedly own the land, they're governing for us, and stopping us from going to the Grand Canyon in certain areas? Why is it off limits? Why are those things not allowed? It's not because of military bases. It's because there are ancient tunnels and systems that exist that from the Grand Canyon down to South America, and these things are real. And there are certain areas in the Americas that are the access points that are the physical access points, right? Because we can get into, like I said, we get into the multidimensional and accessing things and at different levels using consciousness. But then there are physical caves and caverns that stretch throughout the planet, that connect throughout the planet. And organizations like the Smithsonian are ones who are going through and accessing these things and hiding them from the public. Because once again, in their opinion, clearly, and just by the sheer nature of how things have unfolded, they don't want that information out there. That the Chinese were here, that the Egyptians were here, that the Africans were here, that the Aztecs were here, and that there was a universal kingdom, and it was all around. And so, of course, there's remnants, and you're going to find these things across the Southwest, and they have been found. G.E. Kincaid, what's his name? Gosh, I know them all.
Yeah,
But,
there's a few,
Jack, gosh, give me a second to Jack White, I believe, Jake Johnson, that's it. Jake Johnson, G.E. Kincaid, Jake Johnson, James White, those three have damn near the same story of coming down, in the Grand Canyon, coming down the river, and, each one of them had their own unique story of how they got there, but coming into caverns filled with massive statues, relics, treasures, hallways, caverns, and just amazing, unbelievable finds. And these are the areas, honestly, because they kind of tell you where they were, these are the areas that are off limits. These are the areas that we can't go. And so, to me, once again, I like to use the word common sense, because we can get into all kinds of fanciful stuff. We can get into deep talking, and there could be some real big words used when discussing and unfolding all of this knowledge and research and information. But at the end of the day, common sense always wins, in my opinion. And common sense tells you that something of great importance, so great that they feel it's national security, to stop people from going in these areas. So common sense says, yes, it's true. And, let them continue to say that they're hiding, that they're not hiding anything. We don't know what you're talking about. Oh gosh, there was no G.E. Kincaid. For me, I don't need them to admit it. The proof and evidence is overwhelming, and these things are a reality. So if you want to stay in your box, I'm not talking about you, Ryan, but anyone listening, if you want to stay in the box of unbelief, or that these things are too fantastic and not true, that's fine. Stay there. You're not, you're welcome to believe or not to believe what you want. But for me and others like me, and my grandfather and uncles and others today who are not scared of the truth and who aren't afraid of going into the quote-unquote unknown, this is amazing fun. It's a hell of an adventure. It's amazing to uncover these facts. And it really, to me, it gives a bigger meaning to living and existing. To me, it's exciting. I just don't know what else to say. Once again, I'm probably rambling on. It's just, at the end of the day, these things are magical to me. They bring me back to being a kid. That feeling you have as a kid, at least I can only describe my experience. And as a kid, believing that in the impossible, in miracles and magical moments, it really just says, man, I knew, because something inside has always said to me, this doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right. Why do they say it's this way? And these truths unfolding, being unveiled, really just resonate with me and make me feel whole again. Like, okay. And it's everyone's own journey, man. Some people are happy as pie with whatever they're doing today and how they're doing it. And everyone is unfolding at their own rate, at their own level of consciousness, and seeking to find whatever that is, materialistic, spiritualism, and beyond. And for me, it gives me purpose in life to be able to share these things and these connections with those who are like-minded and who are seeking and searching as well too. So I guess that's what I wanted to say.
Man, amen to that. It's about the journey, not the destination. And the powers that be want to tell us that we've reached the destination. It's all been done. There's no more magic in the world. And I agree. Those are the things that get me fired up. That's what gets me going. And the powers that be really want us to believe that we're not special. There's no magic left. There never was. And, you hear that saying, that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing humanity he didn't exist. But I believe the same is true of anything, even a higher power or magic or treasure or, these amazing artifacts and the knowledge that came with them. And the Grand Canyon is vast. I heard the stories of G.E. Kincaid, of Jake Johnson, James White, all these explorers, and I thought, okay, people are saying that you can't, access it. I wonder if it's really true. I went with my family, and sure enough, they have people there. No drones. Don't look this way. Go over that way. And we're talking about a place that you can see as far as the eye can see. It's over 1.2 million acres of land. And there are so many areas that are restricted, that are blocked off, that you can't go. And they use the excuses are the best. This is an abandoned mine and there could be holes. Oh, this is an endangered plant area. Over here we have, it just goes on and on ad infinitum, the reasons why you can't go to these areas. And I had a friend who knows a CEO of a Fortune 500 company really well, and he said he went to a place called, I think it's Amangiri, which is like a really nice, high-end, elite, nestled right down there in the Grand Canyon resort. I think you have to go in. You probably heard of it, yeah. It's the kind of place where it's like super exclusive. People fly. Anyway, goes to show that, the stunning reality, if you have money, right, you can get into some of these spots. But he says that this CEO, I won't say who it was, but this CEO was walking around having a great time. And one of the people there at the resort came over and said, hey, you can't go any further in that direction. And he said, there's nothing here. What are you talking about? And they said, we actually don't like anyone taking pictures in that direction. We don't like anyone walking in that direction. Please come back over in this direction. You can take pictures this way. And it just, in my opinion, it lends a lot of credence to G.E. Kincaid, to the other people who say that there are magical locations within the Grand Canyon. And what do you think of the reality of, there's newspaper articles. Is that not good enough? What do you think of the reality of that story?
Oh, the reality, to me, because of the news articles, right? Because there are real news articles that have been proven to be real, authentic, says, hey, it's true. It happened. But just like the Roswell, if we can get into some UFO stuff possibly, because I want to talk to you about your ranch, maybe that's offline.
No, you bet.
But yeah, the reality is that, this has happened. Even recently, I think within the last few years, I think the Smithsonian came out with another statement. We just want to let everyone know that we never recovered anything, and we didn't recover any Egyptian artifacts. And G.E. Kincaid, we don't know who it is. they very well could be telling the truth, the person who wrote that and their staffer who was told to write that. Because maybe they weren't Egyptian, maybe they were Aztec or Mayan or Inca or all of the above, or from China, from Asia. So they're not lying. They weren't Egyptian, they were Aztec. So, the reality, though, for me is we've got 3 witnesses, 3 different occasions in the same general area. And these 3 witnesses, besides the news article, I believe are proof. And then the facts of non-access, right? There's no reason why, no matter any excuse they give for not being there, that if we get someone qualified like archaeologists and scientists to go with a public group to go film all of these areas and all the millions of acres that they've got locked down, if we go with the proper people and authorities, why can't we go in there and film if we have all the safety equipment and all the experts, cave divers, scientists, archaeologists, so we don't disturb stuff? So the reason is because bottom line is there's something greater, in their opinion, that is of such great importance or such a great magnitude that it would change the way, the perception of that the world has on the current way, things are thought to be or told to be. We get right back to history, his story. They're not willing to change that yet, but it's coming. The changes are coming, even with UFOs, unidentified flying objects, UAPs that they call them now. Some in our government have started releasing, whistleblowers have started releasing information. But once again, people like you, and I imagine, and I know me, so I imagine someone like yourself, and definitely people like me, I didn't need the government to tell me that something strange is happening in the skies that's unexplainable. I've been a personal experiencer of it. I've experienced it myself. I know that it's not, an airplane or a bird or a drone. And there are things happening in our skies, and there are things happening in the world, and there are powers to be and things that we don't understand, or things that we are too afraid to confront the possibility of because, people watch a lot of movies and have been scared. But the reality is there are things happening in our skies every day that are not from our government or any other government. Now, I do believe that some of this UFO activity that is happening is of advanced technology that could be not just from space, but could be remnants of Atlantis. They could be having bases in Antarctica or somewhere else in the world. Our oceans are a vast space that's been unexplored. So who knows? I do know some things, but, some things I'm not at liberty to share. And other things I will say that there is such a vast area still here on Earth, unexplored by a modern man, what we call modern man in today's system of things, that people's minds would be blown if they just knew the truth of what's going down. And it's unfolding, though. It's unfolding, and more it's coming to light. And I think there are some cosmic energies and things in play. Hopi prophecies, Aztec prophecy, Mayan prophecy, all kind of the America's prophecy, let's say, world prophecy that's really unfolding right now. And, it's my hope that it's all culminating for the greater good, not for death and destruction. Because let me tell you something, humankind has been on this planet for eon, and we're not going anywhere. And it doesn't matter what happens, there will still, we will still be here, because this is a place that we come to learn and grow as cosmic beings. And so, the story continues. And once again, I'm drifting off. Stop me, Ryan. Stop me.
I like where you're going. Because It's true. As they agree and allege and start to disclose and verify some of these things that we already know, that, in my opinion, is what it takes. And when small story, when I went to the Grand Canyon with my family, they offered a small video documentary in one of the rooms at one of those Grand Canyon tourist areas. The room had AC, which is the real reason we went in. But we sat and we listened to the video, a good, half-hour video about the history of the Grand Canyon, and they actually made that claim that no Egyptian relics had ever been found, but it makes for a good story. And, I sat there and I said, why would they go to the length of even acknowledging that? It's obvious, in my opinion, much like the governmental whistleblowers, when they start acknowledging things that should be unacknowledged, that, to me, is a huge red flag. And we'll have to talk more. I know that there's a lot you can't divulge, but as we wrap up, you will be speaking about things you can divulge at the gathering at Moon Lake. That's August 23rd and 24th, 2024. And let's tell listeners a little bit about that and where they can find more of your information and everything Dan Dillman.
Absolutely. Well, you can definitely come see me and my wife Gina and you and many other amazing people at the Moon Lake Gathering on August 23rd and 24th. I'm definitely excited to powwow with you. I heard that we may be getting together a few days before to do some investigating paranormal, UFO, and other things on your ranch. I'm excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
And people can find out more about me at dandillman.com. They can also, that's my website. They can find me on Facebook under Montezuma's Treasure, I believe, and then on Instagram, Dillman Family. And so, I'm excited, man. There's lots of things, that I'm going to be sharing that my family has not shared with the world before. Certain locations, certain subjects that once again we haven't revealed to the public. And at this special gathering, I want to share that information with people. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about some new discoveries that we've made. We're still out, doing our quest for truth. And we are currently have a location in southern Utah that we've been not just investigating, but excavating. And we've made an amazing discovery. And so we've been filming all of it. So I'm excited to share some of that. I'm excited to share at the Moon Lake Gathering. I'll be bringing some of the technology that I use when we do our investigations, everything from our treasure stuff to UFO to paranormal, bringing some night vision goggles and whatnot. And every time that my family, myself and included, have gone on these adventures, something has happened. So I'm expecting something, magical and unexplainable to be happening at the Moon Lake Gathering. And, I have a good feeling that, we're going to be in for a treat at your place, having some experiences, and then even at the gathering in our night skies. And I'm excited about that. But I'm excited to share some of my latest research and looking to powwow with folks, too. Besides me talking and presenting, I'm a great listener. So I'm eager to hear what others have to share. And, it's time to start sharing and working with other folks, too. So I'm excited to see, where the Great Spirit, connects me with, to powwow with, to possibly go on some new adventures. So I'm excited.
Amen, man. And, as much as they talked you up and all the folks that hyped you up, it doesn't hold a candle to the fact of actually being able to finally talk to the real Dan Dillman, a wealth of knowledge. Dan, thanks so much. I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, and have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you too, brother. Looking forward to powwowing.
The one, the only Dan Dillman. Check him out at the Moon Lake Gathering. And I'm so glad he came on the show. And, I love talking about this type of stuff with people like him. The reality is that whoever you want to call them, the ball worshipers, and I'll just go with that. those who worship Baal. The ones that are in positions of control, who are holding back information from the masses, they don't want us to know that our history is much more magical than anyone could imagine. And they crush hopes, they crush dreams, and they try to siphon off all of that magical energy for themselves. Well, folks like Dan, guys like the ones who are going to be talking at the Moon Lake Gathering, those who are doing the big investigations, asking the harder questions, and bringing that information to the masses, thank goodness for them. They are fighting the good fight, and I know there's more. I hope you do too. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Follow me with your darkest eyes. Follow me with your shape-shifting smiles, and I see you. Maybe they'll believe you. Illuminati, occult dawn trial, silver discs and hidden files, and we see